Good morning, everyone, and welcome into Wake and Take. It's your boy Jason, and we've got some football to talk about today. We're going to break down a couple of the things that you need to know from yesterday's pro days from Michael Penix, Drake May, Tez Walker. And of course, we're going to break down some of the trending topics from around the league as I have a very special guest joining me today. The player profiler newsletter guru, Camaron Edgecomb, will be breaking down his thoughts on all of the topics that we're talking about this offseason and more. So it's going to be a good one. I'm excited to break down some of this stuff with you guys and with Cam. So go ahead, take out your coffee, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Cameron! How's it going?
It is going fantastic. That was an excellent intro. I loved that.
Good. Thank you. You know,
I'm so glad you started with coffee because I have a hot take about coffee and that I hate mugs. Regular mugs, can't stand them. My coffee goes cold in like 20 minutes and I am just super mad at it because as soon as that thing is lukewarm, as soon as it's not burning my tongue, I hate it. So I got these travel mugs. It's a Contigo, not sponsored. They fantastic, much better. Keeps it warm, and I can't stand a regular mug.
I don't blame you. I'm actually an iced coffee drinker, even in my mug. So I know. I can't. It is what it is. It's
gotta burn my tongue.
It's literally like, it's honestly kind of gross what kind of coffee I drink at this point. It's gone like, I've done the whole shebang, right? Where it's like you start with a Starbucks Frappuccino and then you move your way into actual coffee with like cream and sugar. And then you try like the flavored creamers at the grocery store.
Yeah.
And then I've started making my own creamer. And now I literally just put in heavy whipping cream and no sugar, just a little bit. It's just
all right.
Whatever.
Heavy whipping cream. Okay.
Yeah. You know, it is what it is. I use it because we make a lot of homemade pasta sauce around the house, and heavy whipping cream is a common ingredient. So we always have it. I tried almond milk. It didn't. I don't know. Just wasn't it. So
okay.
Anyway, I like the coffee takes though. We're good, and maybe one day we will be sponsored by Contigo.
Yeah. Right. This is the start of a journey, right?
Contigo, if you're listening, Make It Take would love a sponsor.
Yes.
Although I don't know, I guess Contigo's probably keep coffees cold. They're probably marketable for my iced coffee takes as well.
Yeah, I'm sure it probably does both.
All right, well, we're not here to talk coffee as much as we could. Let's go ahead and start getting into the football. Before we do that, just want to shout out some of the people here in the chat. Good morning to you, Jamie. Good morning to you, big time Timmy Jim. Sorry I traded away Jameer Gibbs, my friend, but thank you for sticking around in the Trade Gods League. Let's get rocking, man, because as always here with my guests, I like to just give them the floor on some of the trending topics around the league. The audience here has heard me ramble about all of these topics before. So when we have a fresh face on, it's nice to get some extra opinions out there because at the end of the day, let's face it, Cam, fantasy football and football analysis and all of it really is just some opinionated content. So let's hear some of your opinions on some of these topics. Who's your rookie wide receiver one? Because right now we're hearing a lot of hype between Rome Odunze, Malik Neighbors, and Marvin Harrison Jr. Where are you at in this conversation?
So I know that recently the big talk about Rome Odunze is, the reception perception apparently that is about to be released is not very good about him. I can't see it. Every time I watch that guy, I think he looks fantastic and looks like he should be the wide receiver too, but in this class, but it's just not wide receiver one ability to me. So I do still have him at 3. And then Neighbors and Harrison Jr., I do have him in the same fantasy tier, just like how we saw with Jalen Waddle and Devonta Smith, very different archetypes, but the same fantasy tier when they were, dynasty assets, rookies going into their rookie draft. It's had the same tier, but I do have Marvin Harrison Jr. as far as NFL level, just a tier above. I think he's just a little bit better, and I care less about the yards after the catch for fantasy purposes, for real life purposes than I do for fantasy purposes. Whereas I think Neighbors makes up for that by being such an elite yak guy.
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely both great wide receivers. Will landing spot flip this for you, or are you just going to be locked in Marvin Harrison Jr.'s number one?
I'm going to be locked in. I think that it's Marvin Harrison Jr. to the Patriots at 3. And I
Yes,
think
thank
that's
you. Oh my God, thank you. Hold on, Cam. Thank you so much because I keep getting ridiculed for this, and I think it's a really I think it's a really good decision for them.
yeah, it's a horrible landing spot. You do not
Yes.
want any fantasy players on the Patriots. But you know, dynasty is not 1 year. And
No.
if you have a high enough pick that you're picking Marvin Harrison Jr., you're probably not good enough to win your league right away anyways. So, go ahead and have a pretty good player for year one. That's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, thank you for saying that you think the Patriots can take them because I haven't heard many other people on that. And I just think it makes a ton of sense going ahead and locking down the franchise wide receiver, kind of doing what the Falcons have done, just
Yeah.
building everything around the quarterback position so that when that quarterback is ready, the quarterback you want can go ahead, slide in, and then be productive instead of going through the struggle bus next year. Go through the struggle bus with like Jacoby Brissett or like a second, third round quarterback and get your weapons ready. Get the weapons ready. It's so
Yes.
important in today's NFL.
Get the
So,
weapons, the line, the
yep,
coaching. You got to get it all right.
yep, yep. So I like that take a lot. And, I'm glad that we're on the Marvin Harrison Jr. train here. Did him, I assume, I mean, you've already answered, right, that he's your favorite, but him not doing any testing, that hasn't bothered you at all.
No, I don't. I don't care about that.
Yeah. Don't overthink it, guys. Seriously.
Yep.
It's Marvin Harrison Jr. He's a stud. Now, probably one where we might see some more diversity here is JJ McCarthy, another player whose hype is building. I see the look away. We kind of talked about
Oh
this
man,
before the show. Is this
I
hype warranted?
no, it's not. I feel really terrible coming onto your podcast, first time guest, and I'm just gonna roast your take that JJ McCarthy to me is a 4th round pick. This
Oh, come
guy's
on. Fourth
and
round?
I'm not talking 4th round fantasy pick. I'm talking 4th round NFL
Yeah,
pick,
come
meaning he will
on.
never ever be in your fantasy roster. He's really bad. It's just if you're going to be a pocket presence guy, you're going to be a guy, and he has great throwing mechanics. When you watch him, you're like, okay, I love how he moves his hips. I love how he throws the ball. The reads just aren't there though. It's just not good enough. And it's if a team is picking him in the 1st round, you hope that it goes Josh Rosen. You hope that he's just so bad that you get 1st overall pick next year and take whatever guy climbs up the board. It's going to be Jalen Daniels from Kansas Jayhawks, but it's going to be a really nightmare situation. And you're probably going to get your entire franchise fired. Everybody in there is going to get fired if you take JJ McCarthy in the 1st round. If you take him in the 2nd round, you're probably getting everybody fired. He's
No
really
way.
bad.
Second round? He is not really bad. What makes you say he's really bad?
It's about the field processing. He just cannot understand defenses and how they're going. Sure, maybe you can say that you can teach that. I haven't been able to see that. Guys that are really bad at processing the field when they're in college also appear to be really bad at doing it when they get to the NFL. We're going to talk about Will Levis later, but he's just a guy that he locks onto what the read he think is going to be open pre-snap, and he throws that. And JJ McCarthy does the exact same thing. And worst of all, he leaves these big plays out there on the field every single time. There's just plays that are going to be available to him that he's just not picking. And that's going to drive an offensive coordinator absolutely insane when he gets to the NFL. And they're going to hate him.
I do think that, JJ McCarthy's ceiling is incredibly limited. But I do think he's one of the highest floor prospects out of the quarterback, if not the highest floor prospect in this quarterback class. I would say that he will go in there and at worst, and I mean at worst, be like Ryan Tannehill. And like probably good Ryan Tannehill. Like he is a guy who can get outside the pocket and find the open receiver, even if it is maybe his first read. And I do still think that he is a guy who can, manage a football game like he did at Michigan. Only one loss, took the 76 most pass plays per game and still was top 35 in both yards and passing touchdowns and had the 7th best completion percentage in college football last year. I think that JJ McCarthy has enough. I don't think he's a top 3 prospect. I do still think it should probably go Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, and then a team can take a chance on JJ McCarthy because I'm with you in that I think this offense is going to have to work around him, similar to how Michigan did, right? Where it's not putting the team on JJ McCarthy's back, but letting JJ McCarthy be a quarterback, letting him pass the ball when it's needed, getting outside the pocket and scrambling if he has to. and just picking up these first downs. And part of what hurt him in Michigan, like you mentioned with his first reads, I mean, it was really just Roman Wilson that he could throw the ball to, and their tight end Loveland, and maybe Donovan Edwards sometimes out of the backfield. But I think that with better weapons, with an offense built around him, that he should be fine. I can't see him busting. I really can't. At least with a proper landing spot. I could see a world where, he's not ready to start, where he's drafted to say like the Giants or something. Like that would just be awful. Like no offensive line, no weapons, a head coach that is has a little too big of a head about himself and his ego. And I think that could easily ruin JJ McCarthy's confidence if he had to go out there, start pretty quickly with nothing around him. I just hope that's not the case. So I guess it seems that we're pretty far apart on him, which,
there's no middle ground between us here, but that's all right. That's all right. That's what fantasy football is about. So
we'll have to come back to this when he gets drafted. Maybe I'll have you back on, and we'll see how we feel about his landing spot, where he went. I do think that his hype, as we see in the chat here, is very Will Levis-esque in that, he was randomly going to be the second quarterback taken, ends up going all the way to the beginning of the second round. I think that's a lot of what could happen here with JJ McCarthy, where he might actually slip out of the top 10, maybe land with the Vikings or Broncos if they can't pick up a trade, or if they can't trade up or something. But something tells me we might be able to talk about that later in the show. Let's go ahead and go to, a non-rookie discussion. And I think that we also defer on this. Who's starting for the Steelers week 1, Russell Wilson or Justin Fields?
It's still Russell Wilson, and I think it's going to be bad either way. Steelers, they've got a lot to figure out. The fans are going to be upset that Russ starts week 1. He's going to go out there and be mediocre, and they're going to say, put in Fields. It's just going to be like when he was a rookie on the Bears. Put in Fields, and then Fields comes in, and the offense maybe even gets worse or is just as bad, and they keep losing, and everyone's like, well, they're both bad. That can't be. They're both bad. It's just sad. I like Fields. I have a jersey of Justin Fields.
Nice.
It's not working out. It's over.
I can't say that. I just can't. And maybe it's hopium, but I think that Justin Fields and Russell Wilson have both landed in a situation where they should succeed at least a little bit. But I am with you in that I think Russell Wilson starts the season, and then at some point the fans are like, give us Justin Fields. We want the electricity. We want numero uno being our quarterback. And you're going to hear the Justin chants throughout the stadium as the weeks go on.
Absolutely.
And then we're going to see him start, and we'll see how it goes. But, say what you will about Arthur Smith. He has done a really good job with his quarterbacks, at least for fantasy football. The win-loss column, we could leave that aside. The turnover column, we could leave that aside. But for fantasy points, even Desmond Ridder was putting up 30 burgers last season. Taylor Heineke was scoring a ton. Marcus Mariota was usable. Ryan Tannehill had top 10 seasons under him. And, George Pickens, a really good wide receiver. Pat Fryermuth's a solid tight end, and they've got the good running back room. So I think that this will be a decent offense. But I would be shocked if both of these quarterbacks succeed. I do think it's going to change, and I think it's going to be Justin Fields. I hope.
I'm okay if it is. I have him in one dynasty league, so I'm okay with that.
Cool. I guess you say you have him. I'm going to ask you this because I'm having the same issue here. I'm not selling Justin Fields, and I can't acquire Justin Fields either. He is impossible to trade for, even with this dip. I think everyone that kind of rosters Justin Fields right now is not really looking to move on from him. What are your thoughts on that? Like, what would it take for you to move on from Justin Fields in your dynasty league?
Hopefully my opponents in that dynasty league aren't listening, because I would sell him for a late second. 2025, 2026 second even. Wow. I think that's probably the higher end of what you're going to be able to get from a guy who's a backup and is going to be a backup after this year. So, if it ends up being a pair of thirds, oh well. But both of my dynasty teams are competing, so I'd rather have that guy than those later rookie picks, because I know he has the upside for fantasy purposes, and I'm just going to have to eat that his value has already tanked.
Yeah, it sucks. It sucks. It sucks you can't really buy low on him either. I was like, oh, maybe I could use Geno Smith to get Justin Fields. No, got laughed at. So those are the trending topics. I'm sure there's plenty more out there, but those are the big stories right now this week. Let's go ahead and hop over to the pro days, as there were a couple big ones yesterday. We'll start with Washington. There was no Rome Odunze, so we are talking about some Michael Penix today, and his athleticism was on full display. His unofficial 40 time was a 4.55, which is, of course, the sub 4.6 speed that you want to see from a quarterback. And he had a 36.5-inch vertical and a 10.5 foot broad jump, which was both better than any quarterback at the combine. So the athleticism is there. And then, everything says from the pro day that he had a pretty good day with throwing and that he has now built up some kind of teams that he's meeting with. He will be meeting, or he's already met with the Giants, will be meeting with the Falcons, will be meeting with the Raiders, the Broncos, and the Steelers. Yesterday, after the pro day, he was meeting with Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen from the Giants. And we'll have some other pre-draft visits with the Raiders as well. So I do think it's interesting here that the Giants were in presence, and specifically Brian Daboll was present at this, because this was the same day as Drake May's pro day. And obviously, if the Giants are in the quarterback market, you would think that they'd be going for one of the top end guys. But to see Daboll there at Michael Penix kind of makes me scratch my head a little bit. Anything? Do you find that a little strange?
I think at this point, everything we're hearing is all fake. Drake May's number 2. He's been number 2. He's been number 2 for a long time. And, maybe I'm going ahead and skipping into my rookie hot take, but Drake May is closer to QB1 than he is QB3. He's a fantastic prospect, and I'm KU guy, so saying that about a North Carolina guy is just ugh. But he's could be the next Josh Allen. He really has that ceiling to him. And I really like everything that I see on tape from him, especially the fact that he keeps his eyes downfield. So the Giants have already accepted that there is no way this guy's getting to us, and we do not have the capital and the willingness to go up and get him at pick number 2. And they can't, because it's the Commanders anyways. They're not trading with a division rival. That would just be ridiculous. So they already know that they're not getting Drake May, so they're going to have to go ahead and start scouting the next guy. And maybe they're saying, maybe it's Michael Penix Jr. I do think he has more athleticism than he showed, especially at Washington. When he was, at college before that, and I believe Wisconsin, he did have more rushing yards and more attempts, but 3 ACL tears, I'm terrified. That is really, really bad. And I can understand why he stopped running. I think that puts an obvious cap on his eventual fantasy production. If this guy does become a starter, you're probably not going to be getting a guy who has much rushing upside. But, starting quarterbacks do come from that.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that Michael Penix is the perfect quarterback to draft if you already have a quarterback. And so that's why I really want, I'm on record already after the Kirk Cousins signing in Atlanta. I would love if the Falcons could either trade up at the end of the first round to get a Penix, or see if he falls to them early second. Him or Bo Nix, I think, would fit behind Kirk Cousins really well, especially with both of those quarterbacks kind of underperforming throughout this whole process. Getting a guy who could sit for a little bit, but still has the pocket presence like a Kirk Cousins that would fit that system, I think would be really good for that team. And it seems a lot of teams are kind of expecting Michael Penix to slip to either early second, late first right now, which is probably good news for some of the other quarterback needy teams out there, to be able to take a chance on these guys with the ceiling and a questionable floor. And speaking of ceiling, yesterday Drake May really, really put that on display at his pro day. Bucky Brooks came out and said it was a really good performance. I know it's not perfect, and pro day performances, as much as we want them to be perfect, I'm actually more encouraged by the misses and the corrections after the misses than anything. The talent is there. He's the prototype. You just went on and on about how Drake May is closer to quarterback 1 than quarterback 3. When you hear Bucky Brooks call him the prototype, how does that make you feel?
I don't know if I went on and on, but no, I get it. Is exactly what I see with Drake May. He has some big highlights and he has some big mistakes, and especially the accuracy can be a definite problem. There's a doubt deep down the field.
Yep.
Being really inconsistent with that. But I think that's something that gets fixed when his mechanics get fixed, and I think that is something you actually can fix when they get to the NFL level. It's more the intangibles, and this is my problem with Jaden Daniels, is that May is always looking for the big play downfield. He is willing to run, willing to put himself out there and be the rusher, but he's also going to walk horizontally to the line of scrimmage and still be looking for the big play down the field if he thinks there's a chance for it. Whereas Daniels doesn't do that. May also has the sidearm stuff that you love to see. I got Patrick Mahomes behind me because it's just awesome to watch.
Yeah.
When we talk about arm talent, it's not how far can you throw a ball when the pocket is clean and everything is perfect for you and you just launch it with the full body. It's what can you do when you are in the arms of Aaron Donald, being held up in the air and are still getting that ball off. It's when you're sideways in the Super Bowl and your guys are letting the ball hit you in the forehead. What can you do with just your arm and without the rest of the mechanics? That's what arm talent is really about to me. And May has that. I don't see that with Daniels.
No, I think that Drake May has that too, especially from what we hear about his pro day yesterday. Just saying that, especially when it was deep, was when Drake May's arm was fully on display. And they even, kind of like you mentioned, really did blitz him a lot yesterday from what I'm reading about just his day in general. He threw almost 80 passes yesterday and had people running after him every single time. That was kind of his drill, was just being put off of his set, having to move outside and throw on the run and stuff like that. And he was doing it. The player I wanted to mention from this pro day, though, was Devontae Walker, as this has been a very, very controversial player throughout this process. He's a guy with a really, really high ceiling, and he showed exactly what he's been showing throughout this process at the pro day, and that is that he's an elite separator, and when he can get open deep, he's going to perform well. But he still also has drop problems, like he's been showing at the Senior Bowl, like he showed at the Combine. Are you kind of in on Devontae Walker, or do you want to see his landing spot?
I'm less concerned about landing spot and more concerned about where in the draft he gets taken. If this guy's a second round pick, I'm interested. If he's a third or fourth round pick, like I'm seeing in more mock drafts, I'm not very interested because he does have a concerning, to put it lightly, receiving production in college. He just doesn't have the most yards. His scrimmage yards per team pass attempt, which we'll talk about, 1.57. That's not very good. That is, very low and it's with a great quarterback. So I am worried about that. But if a NFL team says we're not worried about that, we're willing to put a second round pick on this guy, then I'm in, and I always, we're talking about third round guy in rookie drafts. Take the shot. He's cool. I like him.
Yeah, definitely. I like the ceiling with him a lot. When I was at the Senior Bowl, he was one of the wide receivers that just kept catching my eye because, like mentioned, he is an elite separator. He kept getting open, but he really does have a drop issue. I think with the right landing spot, he's actually at the Combine on record talking a lot about the Buffalo Bills, how much he's been meeting with them. Now he feels like he fits in their offense. I think that would be a fantastic landing spot, kind of replacing the Gabe Davis field stretching role. And I would love that. Now, of course, that's a pipe dream, but if that happens, I think you've got to be all in on Tez Walker. I think him and Josh Allen would be a beautiful, beautiful connection, with Stephon Diggs and Dalton Kincaid kind of taking the main coverage away too. I think he could get open, and he just has to work on those drops. But we saw drops from Jamar Chase throughout his rookie process too. So we'll see. The ball's getting bigger. Maybe he can figure it out.
I'll pretend you didn't just hate on my Khalil Shakir shares. That guy is definitely the wide receiver 2 there. And when they trade Diggs away, he's wide receiver 1. So we'll pretend like you didn't say that.
He's a good flex to bench play in your dynasty leagues for sure. And if injuries fall his way, I think he'll get the volume, but I think he is still kind of stuck in that slot role, unfortunately. And I think the Bills are going wide receiver in the draft for sure. They need it. They really do desperately need it. So let's go ahead and move on, though. We're talking about the draft. I want to hear your rookie hot take, your flag plant. I think we already know who it is. Let's hear it.
Yeah, just like what I said earlier, Drake May is closer to QB1 than he is QB3. Caleb Williams is a fantastic prospect, but May is right there behind him. And this to me is like a Bryce Young, CJ Stroud thing. Both these guys are fantastic. You can pick either one at QB1. This is not a CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson, though. Jaden Daniels is a far, far tier away from those guys. Wow. He does not have the NFL capabilities that I want to see in a quarterback. His consistency to run when he does not need to run is very bad. I don't love his pocket presence. He gets sacked way too often. There's obviously concerns about his frame and that he is a guy who will not slide no matter what. And, that's kind of like his superpower is
Yeah.
that, it's 3rd and 9 and he goes and gets you 10 because he's not going to slide at 8. It's really fun to watch in college. And I had him as my Heisman candidate. I have a tweet that I could pull up, and it was like watching this guy in September. I was like, that guy's a Heisman winner for sure. I
Yeah.
do like the player, and it sucks that I have to be against him now because I just don't see any NFL talent really in this guy other than raw athleticism. And I don't think that's enough to me to warrant, pick 3 overall or pick 11 for the Vikings or, really anything in the first round. I think the earliest I would take him is someone trading up in the first round just so they can have that 5th-year option for him. But I'd rather see him go in the second.
Yeah, I mean, I think he'll end up going in the first just because of the Heisman thing. But I
Absolutely.
am with you in that there's definitely a lot of concerns and red flags about Jaden Daniels. I mean, it took forever for him to even produce. Like, literally was not good until last season when he won the Heisman. Like, was just simply not good. Had to transfer out of the Pac-12. And, of course, I mean, it's good to see him produce in the SEC, but we talked about it in yesterday's show after the LSU Pro Day, had an underwhelming Pro Day. And the two people who didn't were Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas. And so that question of, was it Jaden Daniels or these elite wide receivers then comes into question as well, because it took him so long to actually be good. And it took him to have these weapons to actually be really, really good. I know the athleticism is there, but I do fear that we could even see like an RG3 type thing where there's just nothing around him. Maybe unfortunately gets injured and is just forced to put the team on his back way too early. And it's just not there, just not there. And that's why I say, and you say, I think, that the Patriots should just get wide receiver. Jaden Daniels would not be the option for them at number 3. And I don't think J.J. McCarthy is either. Just get Marvin Harrison Jr. and move on. And it's looking like Drake May will be going to the Commanders from everything we're seeing. They were well represented at the Pro Day yesterday. Cliff Kingsbury was there. Dan Quinn was there. The general manager was there for the Commanders as well. I mean, literally everything you want to see. And the Patriots also had about 10 guys there as well. So if he doesn't go to the Commanders, he's probably going to the Patriots. But I think I'm with you in that he's going number 2. And a lot of this J.J. McCarthy stuff is a smokescreen. Because, I mean, we're not really hearing anything about Drake May throughout this process. I would say that yesterday was the first time I heard anything, and that was because of his Pro Day. But yeah, I'm with you. I think I like that take a lot. Anything else you want to say about Drake May before we move on?
Yeah, just pointing out for anyone who likes to bet on the NFL draft, this it's you got to remember who's controlling the media, and now that Barstool and ESPN are the same thing, these news articles that come out about JJ McCarthy at 2 overall, they're coming out for a reason.
Yeah.
And not to get my tinfoil hat on, get all conspiracy theory, but the team that is actually picking at 2 overall and who, the Vikings have traded these picks for so they can trade up, they're not going to tell anyone. It's not leaving their draft room. It's not coming out no matter what. We'll see a docuseries like we did with Anthony Richardson and the Colts last year. We'll see one come out later and how they always loved this guy and that's what their plan was entirely. But, it's not going to be that simple.
No, I'm on record also for just saying that this is going to be the most exciting draft. I know that we've seen some fireworks in terms of trading for non-rookies and stuff like the AJ Brown stuff, or last year, even with the Texans trading up to number 3 after picking a number 2. Exciting. But I think that this year's draft has a ton of different implications, especially on the offensive side of the ball. How many wide receivers can get drafted? Where are these quarterbacks being drafted? Who's trading up? Just so many fun, different storylines that I'm so excited to watch play out here. In just a month, we're just under a month now. We're getting closer and closer to the draft. It's getting very exciting. But before the draft, of course, and it's already basically over at this point, we had free agency. And I just want to get you to give me a couple of your favorite free agency signings or moves that have happened in this period.
Yeah, the number one that comes to me when I'm thinking about what is this team doing in free agency that I like, the first one that comes to my mind is the Tennessee Titans. This is, firing a head coach was not something I agreed with. I like the idea of hiring the offensive coordinator from the Bengals, and I was like, this is just going to be a rebuild year for the Titans. We're going to see what they end up having with Will Levis, and it'll be interesting. But that's not really what they let it become. They said, we're going to give Will Levis a real chance. We're going to overpay for Calvin Ridley. They know it's an overpay. We all know it's an overpay. Who cares? They had to get a guy to help out with DeAndre Hopkins because Treylon Burks is not it. Calvin Ridley is a good separator. Let's see if we can get, Will Levis to throw to him 80 times. See what happens. Okay, I like it. We're going to bring in Lloyd Cushenberry. All right, build up that offensive line. They're probably taking Joe Alt. Okay, I'm starting to see the vision here. Tony Pollard went for pennies to this
Yeah.
team. Great. Okay, I like what that guy can do as a receiver, but he's also a good runner. This is starting to get me interested. And then, being a Chiefs fan, L'Jarius Sneed,
Yep.
fantastic. Chidobe Awuzie on the corners. Suddenly, one of the worst secondaries in the league has become one of the best. And that's
Mhm.
after they traded away All-Pro Kevin Byard last year.
Yeah.
There is a really good system that I'm starting to see from the Titans, and it could, of course, come all crashing down. If Will Levis is not the guy, you're screwed. But you know what? If Will Levis is not the guy, the team was screwed anyways, whether
Yeah.
they went all in or they didn't. We're going to see, either greatness come from him or average or bad, but the rest of the team is now good enough that hopefully
Yeah.
they can make up for that. So I'm really interested in what the Titans are doing.
Yeah, this is my favorite. Like I'm with you 100%. I think just saying the Titans is so much fun because I mean, DeAndre Hopkins, I think, is going to bounce right back into being the DeAndre Hopkins that we know and love. Like you mentioned, I think Calvin Ridley really does open up the field for him. And I think there's tons of room for both of those wide receivers to be productive next year. And as you mentioned, bringing in Tony Pollard, bringing in L'Jarius Sneed, bolstering that offensive line, all of those moves signal that the Titans are going to throw the ball a million times a game next year. They do not care about running the ball too much. Clearly, they want to let Will Levis sling it. And any piece of that pass offense you can get, I think, is going to help your fantasy team. I'm going to ask you this. Who scores more points? This was a tweet on Player Profiler this morning. Who scores more points, DeAndre Hopkins or Calvin Ridley?
We're going to go with Calvin Ridley. D-Hop's injury history is just a little too concerning for me, but I will be drafting DeAndre Hopkins over Calvin Ridley. I just, if a player's injured, you don't have to start them. Whereas if a guy is not injured and they're putting up decent numbers, you kind of feel like you have to.
Yeah,
so.
definitely. I'll ask you this too. If Will Levis fails, does Mason Rudolph succeed? Maybe not succeed, but like, is he okay?
No. Mason Rudolph is horrible. Just really bad quarterback. I would rather have JJ McCarthy than Mason Rudolph, which kind of tells you enough about my opinions of Mason Rudolph. Sorry, Steelers fans. Whatever.
So give me your next move because I think this will help us talk about the topic of today's show.
Yes, absolutely. And when you asked me for a thumbnail, you're like, what player do you want to talk about? I was like, well, I want to keep it a secret. I don't want to tell you because I want to start this segment with a question to you. And let's pretend for a second that JJ McCarthy, we'll say he's not a good quarterback and the Vikings don't like him. And they also don't like Penix. They don't like Bo Nix. And they don't like Jaden Daniels, or maybe Jaden Daniels isn't available. Now, they could try to trade up to 2, get Commander's pick. I don't think that's going to be an option because the Commanders just really want the guy. So why did the Vikings trade for the second first-round pick if they don't like these quarterbacks? The guys that they do like are not available. Why'd they do it? What's the plan?
I mean, I still think that they're going to use both those first picks, if I'm going to be honest with you.
Absolutely.
I think that there's enough there. Like whether it be a top tier defensive talent, which they need, whether it be, maybe another weapon if they want, or, I mean, I think that they could still take a chance. I did a mock draft this week. I really do think that one of Drake May, Jaden Daniels, or JJ McCarthy will be there at their pick. I really do.
Yeah, it could be that, they like the upper end talent in this draft, but I think they have something a little bit better in mind because Sam Darnold is not going to be their QB solution. And it's a name that's not really being talked about. There is a quarterback available for a trade that isn't being talked about. And the first thought is Dak Prescott or Kyler Murray. You know that the teams, they're looking for a future direction, but they just have so much dead cap and would just absolutely screw the team if they left. We're talking 140 million, I believe, for Kyler Murray. That's not happening. And we're talking about 70 million almost for Dak Prescott, as well as 40 next year. It's not happening. Those guys are not available. But there is someone who is.
No way. Is it Justin Herbert?
It's not Justin Herbert. That guy's too good. You can't let him. And they're already begun their rebuild. They need that guy. It's Trevor Lawrence.
Oh.
It's not being talked about, but the Jacksonville Jaguars are horrible. The coaching decision, the keeping Doug Peterson was a mistake, like the guy, but it's just not working out. We already saw how abysmal the offense was last year. Now they're overpaying for bad offensive linemen. Don't like these moves. The receiver room is terrible. I mean, we are one Christian Kirk injury away from seeing that team become a 3-win team next year. It's really bad. And the Jaguars are about to have to pay Trevor Lawrence. There's a ton of money that guy's going to ask for, and there is no way that the Jaguars couldn't pay him no matter what he asks. It's going to be resetting money. It's going to be Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes money. And it's just really bad for the Jaguars' future unless they can do something right now. They've got 2 first-round picks this year and a first-round pick next year. Is 3 first-round picks enough to go get a year 4 quarterback on his rookie deal that hasn't been the most productive? Now, Trevor Lawrence is a franchise quarterback. You can't put a price on that. Fantastic player. The Jaguars should keep him forever. But they might instead fire their head coach midseason, fire the GM, do whatever that they need to do, blow it up, and then go and trade all of these picks for Trevor Lawrence. He's worth a ton now, and he's going to be worth a little bit less next year, a little bit less after that, and then they're paying him, and it's going to be really bad. So I believe that the Vikings have added these first-round picks so that they can go and trade for Trevor Lawrence. They're going to make their Matthew Stafford move. They're going to make their Tom Brady move that puts him into Super Bowl contention. And if it's not going to be the Vikings, it's going to be the 49ers. And if it's not going to be the 49ers, it's going to be the Dolphins. One of these teams is going to trade. One of these just a quarterback away teams is going to trade for Trevor Lawrence, take that step and win a Super Bowl, or at least become a top tier contender because Chiefs aren't giving it up.
Man, I don't know. I haven't heard that one before, and I don't even know what to say about it. Well, but I think it's definitely an interesting option for sure. Does that mean, do you think that the Jaguars just want to roll with Mac Jones next year, or do you think that they would use that capital to draft someone?
I don't know. We're talking about a move that hasn't happened yet, but right. I just have a feeling that this is what the Vikings have in mind. There's a quarterback available. Go send 3 first-round picks, 4 first-round picks if you have to get the guy who is fantastic. And compete now. Go for the win.
Man, that would be if that happened.
It would be insane. It is a bigger trade than the Matthew Stafford deal, which is one of the biggest quarterback deals of all time. And the Vikings would be forced to pay this guy. Like they just thought they got out of the Kirk Cousins money. No, you just it just got way more expensive than that. But I do like Trevor Lawrence a lot. I think he is one of those tier 2 guys. If Mahomes is tier 1, Josh Allen's tier 1, this guy is tier 2 with Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson. He is, a fantastic player and can be the future of the Vikings. And I think they would be pumped to do that because Caleb Williams and Drake May aren't available, and the rest of the guys in this draft are not good.
Wow. I did not expect that one. So I'm very curious to watch it unfold for sure. If that is even a possibility. Like I said, this draft, I think is going to be exciting. And if something like that happened, I think that would be like Ricky Williams type trade history being made. Like just
absolutely.
Like it would be something that's talked about for a millennia. You don't see a franchise guy move like that very often. And then especially to move to just a better offense, better system, more exciting landing spot with better weapons. I mean, that would be wheels up a million times for Trevor Lawrence and his fantasy value. I mean,
buy the dip on Justin Jefferson. He's cheap.
Definitely. No, I mean, even if Sam Darnold is out there next year, buy the dip on Justin Jefferson. I can't believe he's so cheap right now. TJ Hawkinson as well. Are you in on TJ Hawkinson? Okay.
I am in on TJ Hawkinson. I think he's the number 2 option on the team.
David Njoku right now for some reason. I don't get it. I don't care about the injury. Anyway, I'm excited to watch this Vikings offense in general next season. If they can pull off a Trevor Lawrence move, I'm losing my mind. I'm going to start stumbling over words the more I talk about this because it's just exciting thinking about Trevor Lawrence throwing to Justin Jefferson. So let's move on to your 2024 hot take. If you could get even hotter than somehow the Vikings pulling off a Trevor Lawrence move, let's hear it.
Yeah, if that was turning the temperature up on the stove to 8, we're turning it to 9 right now. Unless you got
10?
I don't have a 10 on my stove. It goes to 9. That's the max. But I think there's a high setting. I don't use that much, but we'll say 10. We're turning it up to 10 here. So my 2024 hot take is that this rookie wide receiver class is actually not that good, and it is heartbreaking to say that because we could go down the line and just talk about each of these players for 30 minutes and just how awesome they are at the catch point or, after the catch. And just these guys are just fantastic players. But then you kind of look at their statistical work and what they did in college, and you start to see some red flags.
Yeah.
And the red flags just keep getting brighter and brighter, and there becomes more and more of them. And suddenly you're looking at this draft and you're going, do I like anyone outside the top three? And now we're hearing from reception that Rome Odunze is not that good. And it's like, do I like anyone outside the top two? Oh my gosh, I am starting to get really scared about what this draft is going to become, because I know that we've been hyping it up. We, as the fantasy industry, we've been hyping up this draft class of receivers for over a year now. And is it going to haunt us? Is this going to be last year's running back class, where we were told is a great running back class, but then it turns out, there's just really three good players in the running back class, and Kendre Miller and Tank Bigsby are actually not very good, and Devon Achane's injury proneness really does show up. And what are we saying? So I'll go ahead and break into my main concerns, and it really comes down to two things. And the first one is a yards per route run stat, specifically below 2.00. It's a bench threshold mark. This is what we want to see guys get. These are the players that have been drafted in the first 3 rounds that haven't hit that 2 yards per route run stat. Amari Rogers, Tyquan Thornton, Devin Duvernay, Jonathan Mingo, Michael Wilson, maybe could be good. Chase Claypool did have a good year, then is out of the league. Josh Palmer, Van Jefferson, Terrace Marshall Jr. It's bad. It is bad. And here are the guys that are all below that are expected to be first 3-round picks. So Brian Thomas Jr., boom, that's a first-round pick right there. You telling me that guy didn't hit 2 yards per route run on the LSU Heisman winning Tigers? That's crazy. Keon Coleman, Adonai Mitchell, Xavier Legette. I love Xavier Legette, but now I am terrified. Ricky Pearsall, he's at 1.99, so maybe we just round up, and say, who cares? Keon Coleman, Jalen Polk. These guys are all below that 2 yards per route run, which is not that high of a mark. Not that high of a mark at all. So then of the, 15 guys that are expected to go in the first 3 rounds, we've only got 8, not including the big 3, that are above that 2.00 mark. So the next thing we look at is scrimmage yards per team pass attempt. In college, there was a much bigger focus on, I have a good player, I'm getting the ball in his hands as much as I possibly can. Whether that's with, even running back plays, like trying to go with a Deebo Samuel kind of play, or if it's a screen or whatever it is, scrimmage yards is what we care about. It's not just receiving yards. So we look at scrimmage yards per team pass attempt in 2023, and we get guy who instantly stands out, Javon Baker, 3.12. Awesome. Troy Franklin, 2.69. That's a big drop. 2.69. Okay. Jermaine Burton, 2.46. Roman Wilson, 2.22. And then we are below 2.00 again. Malachi Corley, 1.85. Devontae Walker, 1.57. Ladd McConkey, 1.13. Jalen McMillan, 1.03. Ouch. 2.00 is a very, very easy benchmark to hit. There are lots of players every single year that are hitting this. Of the guys last year's draft that were below let's go with the 2.5. That's not too bad. We've got Quentin Johnston. We've got Jonathan Mingo, once again, Jordan Addison. We've got now I can't remember the Giants guy. Tennessee.
Jalen Hyatt.
Jalen Hyatt, yes. Yeah. Another guy below 2.5.
Yeah.
Starting to get really concerned. The guys above the 2.5, Zay Flowers, Rashee Rice, Marvin Mims. Okay, maybe that one hasn't worked out yet, but maybe it could still in the future. In Jackson Smith and Jigba, we're starting to see 2 thresholds here. You got to hit 2.00 yards per route. Yeah, yards per route run, and 2.5 scrimmage yards per team pass attempt. And there's 2 guys outside the big 3 that hit both of those marks, which are very, I keep saying it, very low marks. 2 guys. That's it. Javon Baker and Troy Franklin. And I'm really starting to worry that the red flags on all these guys, and of course, one or two of these guys is going to work out.
Yeah.
Maybe it's Ricky Pearsall, maybe it's Leggett, Adonai Mitchell, whatever it is. But I'm just not seeing it right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, I think that when you pull all that together, it's definitely some really good takes. I will say the wide receivers that are close to those marks too, that I think we should still keep an eye on just because they're ballers, in my opinion. Roman Wilson and Malachi Corley were both close to those numbers, or hit one and not the other.
Mm-hmm.
And then I do still think Brian Thomas Jr. at 1.95 with the right landing spot could be pretty solid.
Yeah, we probably round up, and there's a all the targets went to Malik Neighbors argument, and Jaden Daniels, ran the ball way more than we expected. So we can make a case like that for each of these guys. It's there, but
yeah, I mean, and I'm someone who isn't as high on, especially like the Lad McConkey for fantasy football next year, and seeing that stat of only 1.13 scrimmage yards per team pass attempt kind of brings that home too. I just don't think he's going to be good for fantasy as good as he is for real football. Ricky Pearsall, I think, is a huge question mark. I'm not sure where all that big hype is coming from. And then Adonai Mitchell, this is another guy. I mean, like, I know he tested really well, but like he's mocking ahead of Brian Thomas right now and doesn't have near the stats or the size. So I am definitely curious about that one. But otherwise, I do think a lot of these wide receivers, Xavier Leggett, Keon Coleman, Jalen Polk, who we have here as well, Jermaine Burton. Like, I think that these are some names that we really should be staying away from when we're drafting next year, or not next year, next month and a half or so. Good take for sure. I'm not going to push back at all on that one. I do think that we get ahead of our skis when we talk about classes being good all the time. Really, it's just a year, guys. Like, it's just players coming out. Like, it just because they're 2024 rookie wide receiver doesn't mean they're that good. Even if there's a ton of good athletes, it takes a lot to perform at the NFL level. And the efficiency metrics are a great way to look at it. So great way to outline all that. Cameron, let's go ahead and send the people to you. Tell the people what you're working on. This was a really fun episode. You gave some really great points, and I want to be able to shine the light on you, Cam. Where can the people find you?
Well, number one, check out the Player Profiler newsletter.
Yes.
I love to highlight what all of the great people at Player Profiler are doing, and the newsletter is just the best way to do that. I have a lot of fun writing the news segment every week, and a lot of fun just working on hyping up everybody else. It's so easy for me because when there's great content, the selling it is very easy. I feel like, not a used car salesman. I'm a Tesla salesman. I got just this great product in front of me. Buy it. I don't have to, it's there. It's, and that's kind of what the Player Profile newsletter is. But if you want to follow just me, I'm at Cameron's Ego on Twitter, and, Fall Start Fantasy Podcast on YouTube. I just did a chaos mock draft where I, had a wheel that I was spinning every single day, or every single pick. It was trade up, trade down, pick a backup player.
Nice.
It was a lot of fun.
Fun.
I won't say the IPAs had an influence on the chaos to that, but it was a good time.
I'm sure it sounds like a really fun time. It sounds like a good show idea for here at Player Profiler as well. Throw some wrinkles.
I'll share my wheel.
Yeah, share the wheel. Send that to me. I'll get it to the powers that be. You have the powers that be. Send it to Theo. He'll like it. Send it to good old Theo. Guys, go follow Cameron wherever you can. Really is putting out some fantastic content. And make sure you do sign up for the Player Profiler newsletter. Great stuff on that every week. Everything you need to know about what's going on at Player Profiler, as well as some tidbits about what you need to know about going on in the NFL itself. Comes out every single week on Fridays, like early afternoon, right?
Yeah, yep. I send it about 1:00 every single Friday.
Yeah, so perfect time
Central
to read.
Time.
Yeah, Central Time. So you've left the office early. Who's staying until 5 on Friday anyway? Then you're coming home. You've got the Player Profiler newsletter to read. It's the best. Cameron, thanks again for joining me. I do have a couple questions before we get out of here from the chat. Would you rather have Jordan Addison or the 107 right now? Obviously, if Trevor Lawrence comes, you're probably taking Addison. But right now, where are you at?
Yeah, it depends on first if Trevor Lawrence is getting there. But is it super flex or single QB is a big question. Because in single QB, I'm definitely taking the 107. But you know what? I'm taking the 107 either way. I'm not a big Jordan Addison guy. I think the big plays were gone with Kirk Cousins with him. So
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I think he's like a good asset to have, but I think that you have a lot more ceiling potential with that 107. I mean, let's face it, he's still got Justin Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson to fight targets for. And then lastly, we have one more question. Who is your pick for the first running back off the board?
I don't, I avoided talking about running backs for a reason.
Yeah.
I think I'm at Trey Benson right now.
Okay.
It could be Braylon Allen, and I don't really hate anyone who says, Jalen Wright. But I think that's it for the contenders for me for RB1. I don't love Blake Corum, but maybe that's just a Michigan hate. I don't know, whatever.
Hey,
but I don't really hate
Michigan.
Michigan. I just, maybe I am a hater with, now I'm saying JJ McCarthy and your running back is no good. That's not fun, but
I'm going Jonathan Brooks to the Cowboys, Corey. I'm going Jonathan Brooks to the Cowboys, second round. Round, get your Brooks to the Cowboys. That is all the questions I saw. So again, thank you for joining me, and thank you to the audience for tuning in. You guys killed it in the chat this morning. Thank you so much for popping in. And Cameron, again, thanks for joining me. This was a ton of fun. Looking forward to have you on again after JJ McCarthy gets drafted top 10 and Trevor Lawrence gets traded to the Vikings. I think we'll have a ton to recap for sure. Everyone, you have a fantastic Friday. Enjoy your weekend. Don't forget to hit the like button, and don't forget to hit subscribe to Player Profiler on the way out. I will see you all again on Monday at 10 a.m. Eastern on the Player Profiler YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Have a good one, and peace.
From the Podfather to you, I deeply appreciate you tuning in. And many ask, what can I do? What can I do to help support the hosts, the research they do, the production costs? Go to playerprofiler.com, Dynasty Deluxe, World Famous Draft Kit, Rankings, DFS Dominator, and of course, data analysis. Subscribe to any one of those, and you support all of us and take Player Profiler to the moon.